I believe I read in the news, you were also a mission leader or a team leader for like a simulated environment. I believe that was in Utah, to simulate like a Martian landscape. What can you tell me about that experience, Shawna? And what are some of those challenges if humanity ever were to establish colonies in these distant planets? What can we expect?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you were referring to the Mars Desert Research Station in the middle of the Utah desert.
Yes.
And the value, so we call it real life on fake Mars. It is an entire habitat in the middle of the desert. If you see pictures of it, it looks like Tatooine. It's incredible. And the value of these environments that are isolated, confined, austere, resource limited, and remote is that they simulate those realities of the spaceflight environment. So because they're analogous in that fashion, we call them analog environments. And so I've been lucky enough to do two there, once as crew medical officer and once as commander. And you know, it's so much a lesson in, yes, bringing your own science with you, creating your operational schedule, and having the team oriented, because if you're not, you know, you're going to be that astronaut or guy or gal who's voted off the habitat. And you know, you learn so much about yourself, about what it means to be a leader, about what it means to be a teammate. And I've been lucky enough to experience this type of expedition in other contexts as well. In 2019, I was lucky enough to be part of the Neptune Aquanaut mission, where I gained my Aquanaut designation, and that was 5 of us for underwater for 5 days doing technology and experiments, as well as science experiments, physiology and psychology experiments, and technology demonstrations. And like everything else in this interview, it's Neptune is an acronym: nautical experiments in physiology, technology, and underwater exploration. And so there's so much value that we derive both from the experience, from building the crew dynamics, but also performing science that is a value to humanity in austere environments, and also with some application for Earth as well.
Got it. So Shawna, you're very passionate about space accessibility, and you've recently co-facilitated space. Could you tell us a little more about that? What does it mean to really have access to space, and how does diversity, equity, and inclusion even apply here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we talk about access to space, it helps to know the context of the why this is important. So one of the greatest and most ambitious things that we've achieved, sending humans successfully to space, wasn't meant as an exploratory feat, but it was a product of the Cold War. It was a show of non-violent superiority between the US and then the Soviet Union. And accordingly, those who were selected for flights in the past were a very homogeneous group. They were military veterans, usually military pilots, males, Caucasians. And so when we look at that foundation of the why and the who went to space, it's primarily, even to date, that skews the data of who's been able to access space. Of the nearly 600 human space explorers to date, it's been 12% women, 1% Black women, and the rest, you know, men. And so we know that the data shows from the governmental space agency astronauts that women, female astronauts perform just as well as male astronauts. And you know, it was never one of my teammates and colleagues, Kelly Girardi, who's set to fly to space with Virgin Galactic. She just put it so beautifully when she said that it was never about aptitude; it was about access. And so it's time to write that, because you know, if we're now changing the why we go to space, if we're changing it for scientific return, for exploration, for benefit to Earth, well, we can't do it for all of humanity without all of humanity. And so now there's an impetus to level that playing field, to democratize that access to space with the rise of commercial spaceflight, and we're seeing that this year with an unprecedented number of commercial missions between Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, Inspiration 4, and SpaceX. And it's time to change the narrative of who goes to space, and also to encourage those who previously didn't think there was a place in space for them. This year alone, we've seen the rise of calls for the first ever para-astronaut, that is an astronaut with disabilities from the European Space Agency. We've seen the rise of the Astro Access Initiative, which flew, I think, 12 Astro Access ambassadors in parabolic flight microgravity in October, from deaf astronauts to quadriplegic astronauts. So this is the why of why it matters that we really have these conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, because now is the time that we're expanding who gets to go to space. And we also need to change the narrative of that space is only for certain people, because there is space for all of us.